I wasn't supposed to be home until tomorrow. The original plan was to fly back in the evening, land late, crash at the hotel one more night, and catch an early flight the next day. But I wrapped up the final Q&A session early at the tech conference in Denver, skipped the closing dinner, and took the first flight out. I figured I'd beat the rush, beat the weekend delays, and most importantly, surprise my wife. That's who I used to be, I guess. The guy who planned small surprises. Who believed that a spontaneous dinner or showing up a day early might still mean something in a marriage 10 years deep. The kind of husband who saw coming home early as romantic, not risky. I walked into the house, dropped my luggage at the front door, and felt that weird, unsettling kind of silence. You know the one when it's too quiet in a place that should feel like home. No music playing. No smell of coffee or candles. Just a weird stillness. I called out Lauren. Nothing. Her car was gone. I figured she was at yoga or the grocery store. The kitchen light was still on and her tablet was sitting on the counter next to a half-finished iced coffee. The screen hadn't gone dark yet. I wasn't trying to snoop, I swear I wasn't. The screen caught my attention as I passed by and I tapped it instinctively so it wouldn't lock up. Just habit, I guess. A flick of the finger. And that was the moment everything shifted. There it was, an open email thread. A chain of messages from someone named D. I didn't even have to scroll. The image was right there, embedded in the body of the message. A photo. A single still frame that felt louder than any argument we'd ever had. Lauren, in a swimsuit I didn't recognize, sitting on the edge of a hotel pool. Her hair was damp, curled slightly at the tips from the humidity. Her legs were crossed and her body angled inward, tucked neatly into the arm of a man I knew all too well, Daniel. Daniel from her office. Daniel, her longtime project partner who she always described in the flattest, driest, most clinical terms. He's harmless, she'd say. A little arrogant, kind of dull, but harmless. She'd mentioned how they were assigned together because their SK*LLS complemented each other. He was all spreadsheets and structure, she was vision and strategy. They made a good team professionally. That was the word she always used when talking about him, professional. Professional. Right? The image said otherwise. Daniel's arm was around her shoulder, his fingers pressed lightly into the skin just beneath her collarbone. She wasn't recoiling. She wasn't leaning away. She was smiling. Not her usual work smile either, the one I'd seen her wear at networking events and client dinners. This was different. This was soft. An asterisk mate. Familiar. I stared at that photo for a long time. I don't know how long exactly. Long enough for the iced coffee next to me to start sweating a little more onto the granite. Long enough to feel the weight of a gut punch that hadn't fully landed yet. My chest tightened, but my mind was slow to catch up. I felt frozen. I scrolled up slightly. There were more messages. Comments about the trip. Jokes. Teasing. Nothing overtly *Zool, but there was something unmistakably flirtatious in the tone. She called him D. That alone told me everything. Lauren didn't do nicknames. She barely even called me by pet names anymore, and here she was calling him D like they were high school sweethearts texting between classes. I heard the garage door open. I locked the screen without even thinking and placed the tablet exactly where I'd found it. My heart started hammering in my chest and a strange calm settled over me like a fog. I had no idea what I was supposed to say or even feel. Anger? Sadness? Confusion? I just stood there, frozen, like a man waiting for an earthquake to finish. She walked in carrying a canvas bag, keys in hand, sunglasses perched on her head. She stopped when she saw me. Ethan? Hey, I said as naturally as I could. Came home early. Her smile was delayed. Just a half second off. Not the kind of thing anyone else would notice, but I did. I knew that face. I knew her cues. She was caught off guard and not in a good way. Oh, she said, setting the bag down. I thought you were flying back tomorrow. I changed my flight. Figured I'd beat the rush. She nodded slowly. How was the conference? I shrugged. Long, informative. She moved toward the fridge and pulled out a water bottle. She didn't ask why I looked stiff, didn't comment on the tension in the room. Just took a sip and leaned against the counter. I wasn't expecting you. I looked at her, not saying anything. That's when her eyes flicked toward the tablet. She noticed the screen had been moved, the position just slightly off from where she'd left it. Her whole posture changed. She went rigid, then defensive. Did you go through my messages? She asked, eyes narrowing. It was open, I replied. I tapped the screen to keep it from locking. That's all. Jesus, Ethan? That's a violation of privacy. Seriously. I didn't say anything. I can't believe you, she continued, stepping back. You just go through my stuff like it's nothing? What, you don't trust me now? I almost laughed. I didn't. But I wanted to. She was spinning. I could see the panic dressed up as anger. The knee-jerk shift from guilt to blame. The photo hadn't just confirmed a suspicion, it broke something wide open between us. And now she was trying to gaslight me into believing I was the one in the wrong. I didn't go through anything, I repeated, my voice even. I saw a photo. That's it. And now what? You're drawing conclusions? Jumping to some paranoid fantasy? I still didn't raise my voice. I didn't even flinch. It wasn't a group photo, Lauren. She froze. Just for a beat? Her throat tensed as she swallowed, and she looked away. Daniel's been my project partner for 3 years, she snapped, voice rising. You know that. You've met him. I have, I said quietly. That's what makes this worse. There was a pause. And in that silence, something between us shattered. Maybe it had already broken long before that moment. Maybe this was just the sound of it finally hitting the ground. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She just deflected. Redirected. Blamed. If you had questions, she said finally, grabbing her water, you could have just asked. Instead of making assumptions. I nodded again. Not because I agreed, but because I had nothing left to say. That was the first blow. Quiet. Sharp. Deep. She walked out of the kitchen, muttering something under her breath. And I just stood there, alone with the silence, and the image burned into my memory. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't start a fight or demand answers. But inside, something had cracked in a way I knew couldn't be repaired. Something had ended. I just didn't know it yet. In the days after that photo, I kept trying to convince myself it wasn't what it looked like. That maybe, just maybe, Lauren was telling the truth and I was the one projecting insecurities where none should exist. But that lie didn't hold up long. Once you see something clearly, you can't unsee it. And what that image did was throw open a door I'd been ignoring for years. The more I sat with it, the more I realized how much I'd let slide, how many signs had been there, blinking like hazard lights while I just drove straight through. It started small. Little things. Subtle. I remembered one evening maybe 2 years ago. We were out to dinner at a nice place near downtown, a restaurant we hadn't been to in ages. I thought it would be a nice night, something to break the monotony. Midway through the appetizer, Lauren took a work call. She excused herself to the patio and left me sitting there alone for over 20 minutes while the calamari went cold. When she finally came back, I tried to play it off with a joke. Did you close the merger or just plan world domination? She smiled, tight-lipped, and mumbled something about client miscommunication. That was the first time I felt it. That weird emotional distance. Like I was just background noise to her real life. But I brushed it off. Everyone gets busy. She was ambitious. I admired that about her, or used to. Over time, that distance became the norm. Conversations with her started to feel like interviews, brief, efficient, devoid of warmth. We used to talk about everything, movies, politics, dreams, even dumb things like what kind of dog we'd get if we ever stopped renting. But somewhere along the way, that stopped. I'd ask about her day and she'd give me clipped answers like she was trying to hit a word count. And if I ever talked about my day? Forget it. She'd nod, half listening, while scrolling her phone or responding to emails with that same glazed expression that made me feel invisible. Looking back, the respect had eroded slowly, like sand slipping through your fingers. I remembered when I landed a new client last year. It was a big deal for me, a startup that had exploded in our industry. I came home excited, ready to share. Lauren barely looked up from her laptop. That's great, babe, she said, still typing. Don't forget we have that HOA meeting next week. No smile. No follow-up. Just deflection. It felt like being congratulated by a stranger on the subway. Flat and forgettable. But I didn't say anything. I told myself she was tired. Stressed. That her work was just going through a heavy season. I gave her the benefit of the doubt over and over again. Then there were the trips. She started traveling more about 3 years into her current job. First it was once a quarter. Then once a month. By year 5, she was on the road practically every other weekend. Networking retreat, she'd say, tossing a suitcase on the bed. Investor conference in Seattle. 3 days. Should be back by Monday. Every time I'd help her pack. Fold her blazers. Slide travel-size shampoo bottles into pouches like I was part of the team. She always made it sound routine, benign. It's mostly panels and PowerPoints, she'd groan. Nothing glamorous. And yet she always packed that one particular dress. The black one with the plunging neckline. The one she used to save for anniversaries or New Year's Eve. I remember once teasing her about it. You trying to knock the VCs dead? I joked. She didn't even smile. Just sipped the suitcase and said, you never know when you'll need to dress the part. Dressed the part. That phrase stuck with me. Now I couldn't help but wonder, what part was she really playing? Then there was the spa ticket incident. It happened about 6 months ago. She was packing for a women in leadership retreat in Napa. She left her carry-on unzipped, and I was helping her find her portable charger when I saw it, 2 printed tickets to a couple's massage at the resort. Same date, same time. 1 room, 2 people. I asked her about it casually, pretending like I didn't know what it meant. Hey, are you treating yourself to a double massage now? She froze for a second, then laughed nervously. Oh, they must have thrown in a second one for free. Promotional thing. I'll just ask if I can switch it to back-to-back. It felt flimsy. Her voice cracked slightly at the end. But again, I let it go. I didn't push. I didn't want to seem paranoid. I didn't want to be that guy. But the truth is I saw it. I felt it. The shift. The wall. The slow fading of affection. She stopped touching me unless it was for show. A peck on the cheek at social events. A quick hug before leaving for the airport. Gone were the late-night movie cuddles, the slow dancing in the kitchen, the hand-holding during morning walks. Instead, there were eye rolls. Sighs. That you just don't get it tone when I asked too many questions. I went from being her partner to being a logistical inconvenience. Like a roommate who hadn't quite moved out yet. I even remember one night, maybe 3 months ago, when I brought up the idea of going away together. Just us. A cabin in the woods. No phones. No deadlines. Just a weekend to breathe. She stared at me blankly. Ethan, I've got a launch window coming up. You want me to take PTO to go stare at trees? I nodded slowly. Forget I brought it up. And that was that. She didn't mention it again. I think the worst part was how she started nizing her independence. At first, I admired her drive, how she built herself up, rose through the ranks, became a force in her field. But somewhere along the way, that pride curdled into something toxic. She started using phrases like, I don't need anyone taking credit for what I've done, or, I built this life, I didn't marry into it. Once, during an argument over something stupid, like the electric bill, she snapped, I'm not one of your clients, Ethan. You don't get to manage me. That one hurt more than I let on. I hadn't even raised my voice. I was trying to understand why she'd switched our energy provider without telling me. But that was how things went by then. Every small disagreement turned into a referendum on my competence or lack thereof. I had been living in a partnership that had slowly turned into a performance. And I was the last one to realize the show had been canceled a long time ago. After the photo, it was like all those memories got rewritten in high definition. All the blind spots I'd ignored became vivid, damning evidence. It wasn't just one betrayal, it was years of erosion. Of slowly being pushed out. Of sleeping next to someone whose heart had already moved on. And the worst part? I let it happen. I ignored my gut. I rationalized red flags. I convinced myself that if I just kept trying, kept being supportive, kept showing up, she'd come back around. But now I see it for what it was. She didn't just drift away. She chose to. When Lauren told me she was heading to New York for an international investor summit, I didn't blink. I didn't argue, didn't press, didn't even raise an eyebrow. Just smiled faintly and nodded. Sounds exciting, I said, casually flipping through the mail as if it didn't matter. She took my indifference as trust, and maybe that was the point. Maybe she'd gotten so used to me playing the loyal husband that she no longer cared to lie convincingly. But she underestimated just how much had changed after the pool photo. I wasn't indifferent. I was done waiting. Before she left, I'd already taken steps. 3 days before her flight, I met with a private investigator named Harris. Middle-aged, no-nonsense, with the tired eyes of someone who's seen the worst parts of human behavior and no longer flinches. He didn't ask a lot of questions. He didn't need to. I laid out the situation plainly, provided him with her itinerary, the flight info she had emailed me, and the hotel confirmation she'd printed and left in the office trash because, I guess, some people think paper trails are a thing of the past. Harris looked over the details with a quiet nod. Give me 3 to 5 days, he said, slipping the folder into his briefcase. If there's something there, I'll find it. Lauren left 2 days later. Her goodbye was brisk. No kiss, no lingering hug. Just a wave from the front door as she wheeled her suitcase out. She didn't even look back. And that told me everything. I didn't text her while she was away. She didn't text me either. The silence between us felt mutual now, a cold agreement, unspoken but understood. We were just going through the motions, each of us pretending not to notice that the foundation had already crumbled. 4 days passed. Then I got the email. Subject line, footage for confirmed instances. It was from Harris. No filler, no emotional commentary. Just an attachment folder with timestamped photos, videos, and a summary document. I didn't open it right away. My hand hovered over the mouse, heart hammering in my chest. As much as I thought I was ready, there was still a part of me that wanted to cling to denial. That maybe, despite everything, she'd gone to New York alone. That maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was all just in my head. But I wasn't. The first photo was outside the hotel. Lauren stood on the sidewalk, suitcase in one hand, phone in the other. Next to her, Daniel. Same guy from the pool. Wearing a leather jacket and sunglasses like he'd walked straight out of a tech startup promo video. He wasn't just helping her with her luggage. He was leaning close. Smiling. His hand was on the small of her back. The kind of touch that doesn't come from colleagues or friends. The kind that says, I know this body. Second file, a video clip. They were in the hotel lobby checking in. The timestamp read 4:07 p.m. Lauren handed over both their IDs to the front desk agent. Not separately. Together. Room for two. The third image was from the next evening dinner at a dimly lit restaurant in Soho. Candlelight. Wine glasses. Daniel leaning in, whispering something that made her laugh. Her hand on his wrist. The same wrist I'd held 100 times while we slow danced in our living room back when things still felt right. The final clip sealed it. Midnight. The hallway camera outside their room. Daniel unlocked the door and they both entered, laughing softly. Lauren looked back just once, her face lit faintly by the hallway light, before the door shut behind them. They didn't come out until 10:42 the next morning. That was it. I clicked through every file, every note Harris had written. He didn't editorialize, he didn't need to. The facts were laid bare: shared check-in, private dinners, in asterisk mate body language, overnight stay. He had even included receipts he obtained legally, matching timestamps for room service, a spa booking under Daniel's name, and a bar tab signed by Lauren. There was no gray area. No, maybe. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was betrayal, confirmed, documented, undeniable. I sat in my office for hours after that. I didn't move. Didn't cry. Just stared at the screen, at the final paused frame of the hallway footage. Her face. That faint, familiar smile. She had never looked back at me that way in years. And suddenly a cold thought slid into my mind: this wasn't her first time. It couldn't be. No one starts off this comfortable with cheating. No one books a room, laughs openly in public, and lets herself be recorded entering a hotel with another man unless the fear of being caught is long gone, replaced by the confidence of someone who's done it before and gotten away with it. I thought back to San Diego. To the spa tickets in Napa. To the late nights. The conferences. The work retreats where her phone was mysteriously off for hours at a time. She hadn't been losing interest in me, she had already left. Mentally, emotionally, physically. Her body was still in the house, but her mind was somewhere else, wrapped in hotel sheets beside someone else. Every carefully worded excuse she'd given me, every brush-off, every "you're just overthinking it," was a brick in the wall she'd built between us. And I'd helped her stack them. One by one. I was the one who gave her space. Who trusted her. Who didn't pry when she needed me time. I was the one who stayed up late fixing the sink while she said she was wrapping up emails from the guest room, only to come back hours later smelling like someone else's cologne. All those memories came rushing back now. They weren't random. They weren't harmless. They were all part of the same pattern. A pattern I'd ignored because I didn't want to believe I'd married someone who could lie so easily, so thoroughly, with such confidence. And then another realization hit me. This wasn't just about cheating. This was about betrayal on a cellular level. Not just of our vows or trust, but of the very reality I had believed in. She had taken her shared life and hollowed it out, replacing it with shadows and stories that suited her needs. She had created two versions of herself, the one she presented to me, the wife, the partner, the career woman who just needed space, and the one she gave to Daniel. The woman who laughed at his jokes, shared hotel beds, and let him touch her in ways I hadn't in years. How long had she been splitting herself like that? And which version was the real one? I didn't know anymore. And honestly, I didn't care. The only thing I knew for sure was that I couldn't unknow what I'd learned. Couldn't go back to pretending we were still us. Couldn't sit across from her at the dinner table and fake normalcy while hearing Daniel's name tossed into conversation like it didn't make my skin crawl. This wasn't just a crack in our marriage. This was the collapse. That night, I printed every photo, every receipt, every log Harris had given me. I compiled them into a folder and tucked it away in the safe under the stairs, along with our mortgage documents, insurance policies, and now the shattered proof of our life unraveling. Then I poured myself a drink, whiskey, neat, and stared out the back window into the dark. No rage. No breakdown. Just quiet acceptance. I'd been lied to, played, disregarded. But now I had the truth. And the truth was power. It's strange how calm you can feel when your entire life has just collapsed. The night I finished sorting through the photos, the surveillance logs, the receipts, all the silent witnesses to my wife's betrayal, I didn't explode. I didn't yell or pace or punch a wall like some wounded character in a movie. Instead, I sat there with the folder in my lap, closed it gently, and felt something unexpected: clarity. Not peace. Not yet. But clarity. There's a certain relief in no longer having to guess. For weeks, maybe months, hell, maybe years, I've been carrying around the weight of maybe. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe I was the problem. But now there was no more maybe. Now there was a plan. That Monday morning, Lauren returned from New York. She wheeled her suitcase into the foyer, her hair tucked back in a loose bun, face glowing like someone who just returned from a spa weekend, not an international conference. She kissed me on the cheek, light, familiar, and sighed as she dropped her bag by the stairs. "You wouldn't believe how exhausting that summit was," she said, already peeling off her coat. I nodded, forcing a smile. I bet. She didn't notice my tone. Or maybe she did, but chose not to see it. That was the first test of my new plan: don't react. From that point on, every move I made was calculated. Measured. I slipped into a role: Ethan, the unsuspecting husband. The easygoing guy who didn't ask too many questions, didn't press when her phone buzzed at midnight, didn't flinch when she said she needed to decompress after work with drinks at her co-working lounge. But while she relaxed back into the rhythm of her lies, I was building my exit behind the scenes. First, I reached out to an attorney. Not just any lawyer either. I wanted someone ruthless, someone who specialized in high-asset separations and knew how to dismantle a narrative in court. A friend referred me to Melissa Vaughn, a name whispered with both fear and admiration across more than one local divorce forum. We met 2 days later. Her office overlooked the lake. Minimalist. Clean. No nonsense. I laid out everything quietly, directly. I showed her the folder. She didn't blink. Just flipped through the photos with gloved hands like she was reading a recipe. "This is airtight," she said finally. "With this much proof, you could file tomorrow and walk away with most of what you've built together." I asked her not to file yet. Not because I had doubts, but because I wasn't done preparing. Lauren and I co-owned a small business together, a consulting firm that, on paper, made us look like a powerhouse couple. In reality, I ran the back-end and technical teams while she played the public face, the strategist, the closer. And while I wasn't ready to detonate the partnership, I also wasn't going to let her walk away with half of it, or worse, twist the story to make herself look like the sole architect of our success. So I started collecting. Financial statements, tax returns, internal memos she'd signed, email trails proving I was the one responsible for most of our key operational infrastructure. I built a paper trail that showed, clearly and without interpretation, that I wasn't just some background figure. I was the foundation. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet. We made dinner together, watched our usual shows, shared the bed like nothing had changed. She kissed me goodnight. I kissed her back. And every night after she fell asleep, I got up and worked. I started transferring funds legally into a private account in my name. Just my share. Nothing sneaky, just protective. Melissa had warned me if she caught wind of the divorce early, she might try to freeze our assets, or worse, claim emotional distress and petition for temporary spousal support. I wasn't going to give her the head start. Then came the recordings. Melissa was clear: in our state, one-party consent was legal. That meant I could record our conversations without telling her, so long as I was part of them. So I did. I placed a discreet recorder under the dining table, another in the upstairs hallway. The quality wasn't perfect, but it was enough. I caught snippets, comments, half-confessions. Once she muttered on the phone to someone, presumably Daniel, something about how well Ethan plays his role. She laughed. I didn't. Another time, after a glass too many of wine, she said I could disappear tomorrow and he wouldn't notice. He needs me more than I need him. That one hurt more than the others. Not because it wasn't true once, but because I knew it wasn't true anymore. I didn't need her. I was just pretending to. A few weeks into the charade, she brought up the idea of space. We were sitting on the couch, some mindless reality show playing in the background. She turned to me, voice soft, like she was afraid to hurt me. "I've been thinking," she said. "Maybe we should take a break. Just to reset. Like a trial separation." I stared at her. "You want to separate?" "Not forever," she rushed to say. "Just some time. To think. To breathe. It might help us." "I don't know. I just feel off." Okay, I said immediately. She blinked. Okay. Yeah, I said, smiling. If that's what you need. She was surprised. Maybe even disappointed. Like she expected resistance. A fight. Guilt. Anything to make her feel justified in leaving. But I gave her nothing. And in doing so, I took everything. The next morning, she packed a few bags, said she was heading to Los Angeles to meet with some of her West Coast clients, one of whom, I was almost certain, was Daniel. She kissed me on the cheek at the airport drop-off and said, "Don't think of this as the end, okay?" "I won't," I said, meaning every word. Because this wasn't the end. This was the setup. Once she was gone, I acted fast. I changed the passwords on our joint business accounts. Not to lock her out, but to secure access. I didn't want any strange withdrawals or emergency loans drawn against the business line. Then I backed up every conversation, every message, every file I collected and sent copies to Melissa. I also installed new locks on the office suite we shared. She still had access to the digital keycard, but I was ready to disable it remotely the second we filed. I called the accounting firm we used and had my name placed as the sole financial liaison moving forward. Told them Lauren was taking a leave of absence and wouldn't be involved in day-to-day financial decisions. They didn't question it. I had been the one communicating with them for years anyway. By the end of the week, everything was in place. Our accounts were separated. Our business shielded. The evidence airtight. And me? I was done pretending. But I kept the mask on a little longer. When she texted me from LA saying, "Thinking of you," I responded with a simple, "Same here." Let her believe the illusion. Let her keep thinking she was in control. Because soon she'd realize the stage she'd been performing on. The one where she played the misunderstood wife, the one who needed space, the one who thought she could juggle a double life. That stage was built by me. And I was about to pull the curtain down. Lauren came back from Los Angeles with a suitcase full of new clothes and a strange lightness in her step. She walked through the door humming, and tossed her bag at the foot of the stairs like someone returning from a yoga retreat, not the woman who just requested a trial separation. She wore a new tan coat, sunglasses on her head, and that bright, easy smile I hadn't seen in years. I stood in the hallway waiting, watching her perform. "Ethan," she said, drawing out my name like it was part of some inside joke. "You're still here? Still here?" As if I might have taken the opportunity to disappear. She gave me a hug that lingered just long enough to be confusing. Not romantic. Not distant either. Just performative. I hugged her back. Why not? One last illusion before the storm. "I missed you," she added, setting her purse on the entry table and pulling off her boots. That caught me off guard. Not because of the words, but the tone. Warm. Tentative. Like she was testing the waters to see if reconciliation might be on the table. Maybe things hadn't gone as planned in LA. Maybe Daniel hadn't played the role she hoped he would once she stepped out of her marriage. Maybe real life with him was a little less intoxicating without the thrill of secrecy. Or maybe she just realized I wasn't begging. The next 2 days were surreal. Lauren slipped right back into domestic rhythm. She offered to cook dinner, suggested we go for walks. On Tuesday night, she curled up next to me on the couch during a movie and rested her head on my shoulder like nothing had happened. It felt like being haunted by a memory that hadn't earned the right to return. I played along. Smiled when she talked. Listened when she described her meetings in LA. Nodded when she mentioned a fun dinner with one of her project leads, never using his name, never confirming what I already knew. She was testing me. Gauging the atmosphere. Seeing if the coast was still clear. It wasn't. 48 hours later, she came downstairs to check the mail and found the manila envelope on the counter. Inside, the divorce petition, the asset division draft, and a list of exhibits that included surveillance footage, financial documents, and recorded conversations. She didn't say a word when she saw it. Just stood there for a long time, holding the folder like it was a live grenade. Then, slowly, she opened it. I watched from the kitchen doorway. No emotion. No outburst. I just waited. Page by page, her face drained of color. The surveillance photos. The time-stamped hotel entrance. The spa booking receipts. A transcript of the hallway recording. All organized and filed neatly like a closing argument. When she finally looked up at me, her mouth opened, then shut again. "You're filing for divorce," she said flatly. "I am." Her eyes scanned the document again. "You had me followed?" "I had questions. You gave me lies. So I got answers." "You recorded me?" she snapped, the first flash of anger showing itself. "Yes. That's illegal. Or it should be. It's not. Not in this state. One-party consent. You'd know that if you ever read the privacy clause in our consulting contracts." She flinched like I'd slapped her. Not because it was cruel, but because it was cold. Measured. Not the wounded husband she expected. I wasn't giving her a monologue or a tantrum or a chance to spin. Just the facts. She walked to the sink and poured herself a glass of water, hands trembling. This isn't necessary, Ethan, she said finally. I think we can still No, I cut in. We can't. I made mistakes, she continued. I lost myself. I was under pressure. I felt neglected. Don't, I said. Not loud. Just firm. Don't stand there and sell me the same lines you gave yourself to sleep at night. You didn't lose yourself. You made choices. Repeatedly. She turned, glass still in hand. So this is it? This is clarity, I said. Something I've been chasing for too long. There was a long pause. Then the tears came. They weren't the dramatic sobs of a desperate spouse. They were tight, quiet, the kind that creep in when you realize the power dynamic has shifted and the script you wrote doesn't apply anymore. She tried again. Do we really want to burn it all down over one mistake? One. I laughed. This isn't about a single lapse, Lauren. It's about years of gaslighting, of calculated indifference, of being made to feel like I was overreacting, too sensitive, too suspicious while you were building an entirely separate life. She said nothing. You didn't just betray me, I continued. You insulted me. You used my trust like a currency. And when I didn't make noise, you mistook that for weakness. She stepped forward, voice shaking. I didn't think you'd find out. That was probably the most honest thing she said all day. And it cut deeper than the lies. She hadn't expected me to notice. Hadn't expected me to fight back. I was supposed to be the doormat, the safe fallback when the affair fizzled or lost its shine. But now I was the one holding the exit door open. Later that evening, I got the notification. Her attorney had filed a response to the petition. Not a counterproposal, an accusation. Mental cruelty. Emotional manipulation. Controlling behavior. I stared at the PDF on my laptop for a good 5 minutes, mouth slightly open. She was trying to flip the narrative. The woman who'd lied, cheated, deflected, and distanced was now claiming that I was the one who'd broken her. I forwarded the document to Melissa. Her reply came within 20 minutes. Expected. I'll shred it. And she did. The following week, we submitted our full evidence package to the court. Photos, footage, recordings, documentation of assets. Messages between her and Daniel retrieved legally from a shared email account she'd forgotten to log out of. Every claim she made in her response was dismantled by cold, hard proof. You can't call someone controlling when you've spent half a year sneaking into hotels under false names and leaving receipts behind like breadcrumbs. You can't cry manipulation when every move was a calculated step away from honesty. The walls began to close in. Her lawyer requested mediation. We declined. She offered to settle quietly. We ignored it. Then she tried the guilt card. I don't want this to get ugly, Ethan. Then you should have thought about that before it got ugly, I replied. Each day that passed, she looked more and more like a person unraveling. And I felt lighter. It wasn't revenge. I wasn't savoring her downfall. It was justice. Not in a courtroom sense, but in a personal, moral one. The kind where you finally get to look at the person who wronged you and say, you don't get to win this. The turning point wasn't the folder, or the divorce papers, or the legal takedown. It was the moment I stopped waiting for her to fix it. The moment I realized that closure wasn't something she could give me. It was something I had to take for myself.